Yeah, I remember we had those. We had discussions. Shannon and I will often sit down and start chatting about worlds and pick one another's brains for ideas. And, I need a good name for these guys going to be like that, or I thought of this great idea. I'm trying to figure out how to work it in, to this story world. And I remember going over the Sentinel Wars world with her for it was about 2 years, kind of coming up with the elements that she'd need. And it's, as a writer, it's kind of frustrating because you've got something great rolling around in there. It's going to come out really cool, but it's not done cooking yet. And at the end of the day, it's really kind of you stop. Well, no, it's just not done cooking. I can't start it yet. And then eventually something goes bing, and then you can start writing chapter 1.
And then there's deadlines, and then you make things cooking.
I love deadlines. They make a lovely whooshing noise.
How do you take existing mythology and then adapt it? And what decision process goes into changing what's has become the cultural norm to fit your stories?
I like to change it enough that it's not same old, that you get some surprises. Like for instance, I do have vampires in my world, but what happens to them when they get in the sunlight is different. They don't sparkle, I promise. That kind of thing. So that's the way I handle that.
Yeah, I mean, whenever you pick up a story element like that, you want to put your own spin on it, on how you use it in your story. You want to slap a thin coat of paint over it, at least before you try and from wherever you've stolen it from, before you try and resell it to the unsuspecting reader.
File off the serial numbers.
Yes, exactly. You got to do a little bit of work like that. But mostly, I usually try and when I have an idea for something new, I'll stop and think to myself, what if we take the story of the 3 blind men and the elephant, we apply it to vampires, and what can that mean? That we've got this aggregate image of vampires that is limited and skewed because we have a very we've had an odd set of an incomplete set of observations about them. So now we've got this vampire lump. It's like, okay, well, what if it worked like that? Now I can split the vampires into 3 distinct kinds of vampires that have each been encountered over the years, but nobody really knows the difference between any of them. And so we've got the modern image of the Hollywood vampire, with all the standard Hollywood vampire tricks. But it's actually, I could then break those out into 3 different cohorts and then say, okay, now I've got these 3 different competing predators, and we're going to have to figure out an ecology for how they work and how they interact with their prey and how their politics function, and it turns into a whole huge thing. Hopefully, that you can make that happen over and over within the same story, enough to keep the readers going, oh, this is something neat and cool, and yes, it does make sense. I've never really thought of that before, but oh, I should have understood. That's when you've won as a writer, is when the reader goes, oh, I should have seen that coming ages ago. And there's no way they could. But you've made the scene, contiguous enough that the reader goes, I should have seen this a long time ago. And then it's like, yes, victory.
Yeah, I definitely like sort of customizing and tweaking my traditional creatures if I'm going to use them. I had mentioned writing an urban fantasy set in the New Orleans of the big Katrina hurricane disaster, and it's called Bad Luck Spirits Social Aid and Pleasure Club. And the idea behind the novel was, when my family and I were trapped out of town in Albuquerque at a science fiction convention, actually, Katrina, and I found myself watching, CNN hours and hours at a time, and every 5-6 hours, things were just getting worse and worse, and I'd go to sleep, and I'd wake up, and I'd turn on the TV, or I'd run to the internet downstairs at the hotel, and things would have somehow gotten worse. And I remember thinking to myself, this is beyond human capacity to screw it up this badly. There has to be something else going on, something behind the scenes, some secret history of the massive cluster you-know-what that is going on. And so my notion was, well, maybe there's a conspiracy, a supernatural conspiracy of bad luck spirits in New Orleans that's trying to basically wipe out the city, drive all the human inhabitants out. And then I started thinking, well, where would these bad luck spirits have come from? And I started basing them on the different ethnic traditions of the various populations that came in over a 300-year period to settle New Orleans. So I ended up with of course, French and English bad luck spirits, African bad luck spirits, Ashkenazi Jewish bad luck spirits, working my way up to the Vietnamese bad luck spirits, who ended up being actually my favorite characters in the book. But yeah, I did of course, a lot of research into the bad luck spirit traditions or trickster traditions of these various different cultures, but ended up, tweaking just about everything.
Yeah, you get that one little idea, and all of a sudden you've got this story universe spawning. And you look back a couple of weeks later, and you've got half a novel worth of notes. They don't actually tell any stories at all, but boy, they're cool. I think it's the curse of a writer. I think that's really that kind of mentality. That's what drives you to become a writer. You got to get that out of your head.
Following up on what you were saying, Andrew, about the different mythologies that you were bringing into your book, do you all feel that in American urban fantasy today there is a dominant mythology? And looking forward, if there is, do you think it's going to expand to other world mythologies and incorporate those with it?
Well, I would say, writers tend to be archaeologists. Archaeologists, sociologists, anthropologists, they're always looking for, digging for fresh material. So, of course, if you go back 20, 30, 40 years, your dominant cultural mythologies would have been, Irish, German, English, etc. But certainly within the last 10, 20 years, there's been a huge amount of branching out, and I think we'll see more and more of